Hello and welcome to this Python tutorial with me, James from Matador Software, where we'll be looking at the Zen of Python Easter egg, how to get this in our Python IDE or code editor, and actually general lessons from not just a Python code development perspective, but also data, business intelligence, and maybe even the wider applications that this has. Now, when we type import this into our IDE or code editor in a Python file, we see 19 of these rules that were originally submitted to a Python Usenet group in the late 1990s by Tim Peters, who was one of Python's original and pivotal developers. So I'll let you look on the screen. You can see the 19 principles, and we're actually going to look over these in more depth shortly. So Python programmers have used this Zen of Python as their own development process or framework, and it's become a well-known standard, so much so that it was standardized as PEP 20 in 2004, where a PEP is a Python enhancement proposal. So let's take a look at the actual key lessons that we can learn from the Zen of Python and why these are really important, especially in the field that I'm in and create content for, data and business intelligence. So key lesson 1, beautiful is better than ugly. Absolutely. Now, from a Python programming perspective, code's often written quickly, but readability and collaboration isn't always thought about. So although it doesn't have to necessarily be readable, the code of Python language must be thought out, consistent, and easy to use. Now, beauty is subjective, but I would agree that this is a paramount foundation of data, business intelligence, and any work of collaboration. If we make things beautiful, clear, it makes working together collaboration, and ultimately end-user buy-in is going to happen because by nature of things being easy and a privilege to work with, people naturally gravitate to it more. So lesson number 2 is follow best practices. Well, if we look at this in the Zen of Python, there's actually 4 lines that relate to this. We've got special cases aren't special enough to break the rules, although practicality beats purity, flat is better than nested, and namespaces are one honking great idea. Let's do more of these. So the creators of Python took design and functionality very seriously when developing the language. And also, programmers may notice some intricacies that don't apply to other programming languages. Now, this consistency makes Python one of the easiest programming languages to work with, but it can introduce problems when you need to consider special cases. Now, in wider terms, what I would say is that if you follow best practices, it means that you sort of work towards one standardized approach. Now, this is great in business intelligence and data and in wider realms as well. And you often get to the point where practicality is the answer to keep moving and keep improving by iteration. Lesson number 3, be concise. And in the field I'm in, data and BI, this is really important. So we see in the Zen of Python there should be one, and preferably only one, obvious way to do it. And although that way may not be obvious at first unless you're Dutch, so a shout out to Python's creator, Guido van Rossum. But although these are slightly tongue-in-cheek, it's incredibly important, and really in anything you do, if you can work towards a concise standard, and I often say when you're working on BI solutions or applications, usually what appears to be simple has actually taken the most work in the background. And if you work to a standard where you gradually take away everything that isn't relevant, you get to a point where your code or your application or your dashboard, whatever, is very easy to follow and gets that sort of entices end users in. Now, lesson 4 is centered in things being easily explainable to wider stakeholders, and really when you can explain things easily to non-technical peers, because in organizations you will undoubtedly work with them. So in the Zen of Python, we see if the implementation is hard to explain, it's a bad idea. And if it's easy to explain, it may, not always, but may be a good idea. So as a developer in any sort of field, you'll frequently be in contact with people who are not familiar with programming, and really don't care. They just care about the end result. And often these people are actually responsible for making key decisions around your end project. So it's really important to be able to communicate with these end users. And if this foundations within the Zen of Python are built into the way you work, that's going to be a huge positive towards your success. And the last lesson, lesson 5, critical thinking wins. Well, absolutely. We see a line in the Zen of Python that says, in the face of ambiguity, refuse the temptation to guess. So that's very important, and that refers to not going at every solution with trial and error. Learn how things work under the hood and use that to implement the correct solution and the relevant one. It's going to save you time, and it's going to help your deeper understanding of things. As usual, if you like this content, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share.